Hello, how you guys doing? I'm going to talk about two of the most popular teams in the world making headlines right now. One is in the off season, one is preparing to actually play for a championship. If you haven't guessed it, I'm talking about the New York Knicks and the New York Giants. The Knicks are in the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. It's game one is tomorrow night. I know you're going to tune in. One of the stories is their center, Mitchell Robinson. He's playing with a surgically repaired right hand, not a broken finger. It's a broken fifth metatarsal. It's the bone right up under the pinky. And they don't really know how it happened. And he just know he's dealing with it and he had to have surgery. And that surgery usually takes 52 days to repair. And the fastest return was actually 21 years ago in 14 days. He's trying to beat that by a few days, and this hasn't happened since 2005. Meanwhile, in East Rutherford, New Jersey, Malik Neighbors, the New York Giants star 22-year-old wide receiver, he suffered, everybody knows, and you probably saw it on TV, he suffered a season-ending ACL and partially torn meniscus in week 4 of last season. He had surgery in October of 2025 to repair it, but he ended up having to go back in to have a second surgery to have scar tissue removed. And his head coach Harbaugh said it's not a simple knee injury. It's not a simple knee repair or a surgery. And he's slogging his way through it, which I'm not sure what that means. I guess he's grinding his way through it. And he's trying to make the best out of the situation. And last Friday, the Giants suffered another huge loss. Gunner, the wide receiver, they fear he tore his ACL. He was not hit, it was a non-contact injury. And he was just jogging through practice this past May and he popped his ACL. If you haven't noticed, I'm in the gym. This is my office. My name is Coach Allen, and welcome to the first Game Ready episode on the Sideline Sports Network. It's a pleasure to see you guys. Hope you guys subscribe and really enjoy the show. I'll be here every Tuesday night. Tonight we're going to talk about, before the NBA Finals tip-off, I want to have a conversation that every sports fan is talking about right now. But nobody is really fully explaining. I mean, you really can have the idea, but you're not really explaining what the deal is with this injury, with these injuries, especially with the center for the New York Knicks. He continues to have these stress fractures, and there is a limited understanding of why it keeps happening. And there's an actual pattern here. And we're going to get into that tonight. So let's go. I want you guys to really sit back and relax. And I'm going to give you a brief idea of who I am and what I do. And you're listening to or watching the Game Ready podcast presented by my company, Atlas Performance Training, here in Orlando, Florida. My name is Coach E. Allen. I'm a former college and professional football player. Now I'm a sports performance coach. I'm the founder of Atlas Performance Training here in Orlando, Florida. I'm going to join you every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on the Sideline Sports Network. And whatever you do, wherever you listen to your podcast. And we're going to talk about several different topics. I won't always talk about injuries. I won't always talk about sports. But this show is geared to help former athletes, active and healthy professional adults in their late 30s, their early 70s, understand their bodies well enough to keep doing what they love to do for as long as they want to do it. And as everybody knows, we start off talking about one of the things that really sucks about being active is injuries. And injuries are inevitable and they suck. The ones like we talked about earlier, which some could be prevented and some can't. And the ones that are quietly happening in the background after a slight pull or slight twist of your ankle or your knee to people who have never played sports professionally or at any level. We're going to cover 3 areas or 3 injuries, or you can call them case studies of athletes that are dealing with injuries now, and they're playing at a really, really high level. And there's a lot of concern moving forward with 2 of them. I'm going to walk you through the situation of the 3 athletes that I mentioned before that are in the headlines right now. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to address this from a performance coach's perspective. Malik Neighbors, who we talked about earlier, he's a star wide receiver. He's 22 years old. He had a breakout rookie season. He had 109 catches for over 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns, a record-breaking season as far as production for this first-year player. Then in September of 2025, he tore his ACL, like we mentioned before. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper in it. It's not just an ACL tear. It was a full meniscus repair. Now, I've had several done on this left knee alone. And those are 2 major structures within the knee. And it takes months and sometimes close to a year of recovery. And he had another issue where he had to have surgery this past May, where he had scar tissue building, and the Coach Harbaugh, the head coach, he was saying that he's, like I said before, he's trying to manage it, but it's not a simple surgery. It's not a simple procedure. Here's what I would like for you to know, and I believe everybody knows it. Everybody's used to ACL tears, and some of you have probably gone through having an ACL tear. ACL tears and meniscus tear are really complex structural events that take a lot of time to heal, and it affects the joints above and below the knee and the actual motion and the actual function of the knee moving forward. Malik's body is responding with scar tissue as a natural response. It's just he had a lot of scarring that limited his range of motion. And really his recovery is not on a timeline, it's a process. We're going to talk about another guy who is the center for the New York Knicks, Mitchell Robinson. He's going to play through a fractured hand, like I mentioned earlier, but he's had a list of stress fractures. He's had a broken right hand, a broken right foot, a broken right thumb, and multiple procedures to repair these stress fractures, and even one in his left ankle. Now he has the one in his right hand going into the finals. In 8 NBA seasons, he's reached 70 games just once. That's a crucial negative pattern that really needs to be addressed, and usually stress fractures are linked, and I'm not a doctor or a medical professional, they're linked to nutrition, lack of nutrition and actual preparation, in the off season. And usually, it becomes a chronic issue when you have an accumulation of there's a high low and high level of play. He's an elite athlete. He's conditioned. He's also 7 feet tall, playing center for 82 games plus the playoffs. He has a decision to play tomorrow. He's an elite competitor, but it raises the question: is it a smart idea for him to actually play? What do you think? What would you think that playing through a structurally compromised limb costs you, and really the surrounding tissues over time? It can be extremely detrimental. Next, we're going to talk about the other center, the heir apparent to Michael Jordan, Victor Wayman Yama. I may not be saying his name correctly, but he's the 22-year-old, 7 foot inch tall. Like he has an 8-foot wingspan. He's physically the most physically gifted athlete in NBA history. I saw him play the other night, and I've never seen a 7-footer do the things that he was doing. But he's had a lot of issues also. He's had issues with blood clots. He's hyperextended his knee. I mean, that's pretty normal. And he's had multiple health scares in the several NBA seasons he's played. His body he's 7 foot tall. The body wasn't designed at 7 foot tall to move like he does. And this is not me being a cynic, but this is just basic physics. This gives his body has to be prepared to do a lot of different things because he has longer levers than everybody else. His joints are not skilled to absorb the force and neutralize that force in an efficient way. We talked about these 3 elite athletes, 3 different injuries in 2 different sports, but the same underlying reality. The body has its limits, but it sends signals to those limits, regarding those limits, as we reach certain levels of volume and as we reach certain levels of actual of playing. There's a difference between injuries that end seasons and the injury that never happens. And as we go along, we're going to talk about whether those signals that we hear are acted on and acted on in time so we can try and prevent injuries. And as I've been in this industry over the last 20 years, one of the main things that I focus on is injury prevention. And we try to look at patterns, and tonight we're going to talk about the patterns that nobody is really talking about. And I'm not sure why this keeps happening. That's the main question. Why does this keep happening? Not just to these 3 athletes, but athletes on every level, every age, in every sport. It's a pattern, that is really noticeable. And if you enjoy sports and you enjoy seeing your favorite players play, you've seen them battle through injuries. But some are more chronic than others, and it can lead to a shorter career. And there's millions of stories that actually go into that. One of the patterns, the body does tell you what happens before it breaks. I'm not going to get too nerdy about this situation, about what we're talking about, but every significant injury is preceded by, several signals: tightness, asymmetry, and compensation. And these 3 things group together to give you warning signs of when you're experiencing injury. And missing these warnings can cost you later on in life and actually keep you from doing the things you really want to do. Just to go over it, Gunnar Olszewski, he's the wide receiver for the New York Giants. He was just jogging, and apparently he had a non-contact ACL injury, like I mentioned before. But usually the first signal that you're going to have some sort of issue with your knee, there's strength imbalances in the front and the back of the knee. Usually with ACL tears, non-contact ACL tears, there is a strength imbalances between the quad and the hamstring. And usually the quad is stronger than the hamstring, and when there is a certain jarring or stopping, your femur will shift forward, your tibia will stay in place, and the ACL will stop. And if you actually turn in that same movement, it will stop, and that shearing action will tear the ACL. Modern sports are faster and more explosive and demanding than ever. The training science has gotten better, but the gap between, athletes preventing injuries it seems like it's widening, in some cases. but I want to be very clear. I'm not just talking about professional athletes. I'm just using that as an example that everybody is actually talking about. That same pattern plays out every day at every level of activity. As a 45-year-old, just for example, weekend warrior basketball player who feels something in his knee and keeps playing through it. A 55-year-old golfer who I work with a few has lower back pain, telling them that every backswing is giving them some sort of signal that they're moving in the incorrect way. A high school football player who just graduated is not trained correctly, who has knee issues. These are similar injuries. These are similar signals that really will tell you exactly what you're dealing with. You just have to look at it. You have to listen to your body and listen to the signals that your body is actually giving you and sending you. I'm going to talk about the 5 specific signals your body sends before a significant injury, like a knee injury, ankle, and usually those are the 2 main injuries that keep people from actually performing at a higher level in any sport. They're a symptom of a disease and the signal of accumulated stress, physical stress, your body is communicating. And I'm not talking about a disease like cancer. I'm talking about a disease, you can say malnutrition, something that actually is preventing the body from functioning on correctly because you have strength imbalances. Asymmetries in the body, which I just mentioned. Those strength imbalances, those asymmetries between the front and the back of the body can have you compensating and really have you put yourself in a position where you are making joints that are supposed to be stable react like the mobile joints. And just for an example, just so I can slow down a little bit, you have a mobile joint above and below the knee, which is the hip and the ankle joint. Whenever those joints are not mobile, the knee suffers. If you have immobility in your ankle, you have immobility in your knee, in your hip, your knee suffers, and it actually puts that stable joint in a compromising position, which will present stiffness and pain, and it will actually limit your everyday function. That's one of the main chronic signals. Usually the joint in between the joint that's suffering in between, usually they're the two joints that oppose that joint, those are the issues. One of the things that also exposes you to injury is being exposed to fatigue. And that may have been the case with the stress fracture with the center for the New York Knicks. He may have, they really don't know how he injured his hand, but high volume of play, he had a stress fracture in his hand, and that fatigue within that area caused that bone to just give, and he had no other choice but to get surgery. One of the other signals is persistent soreness in a specific location. Sometimes when you have when you have a hamstring pull, one thing that happens with a hamstring pull, the hamstring tightens, and sometimes the glutes shut down. That causes lower back pain. That causes your lower back to be put in a position where it has to take up actual movement, or it has to take up for the injury in the hamstring. And one thing that the body does, it always compensates, and it just wants to get the job done. And one thing that I'm going to talk about the movements you have started. Basically when you move, you start to actually work around, and you try to work around these injuries, and you try to make sure that you don't do certain things. So you stop. People usually stop, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. Usually when you sustain an injury, and this is one of the main issues that I deal with on a daily basis. I have a member of mine who is recovering from a similar surgery to Malik Neighbors. He had a total meniscus tear, where they had to actually go in and stitch together his meniscus and put it back together. And he's still in recovery. I mean, granted, he's a little bit older than Malik, but that is a serious surgery. And one of the issues that he didn't want to do, he didn't want to stop being active. So he came, did the assessment. We started doing the actual protocols while he was doing his rehab and physical therapy. Now he's back playing volleyball again. One thing's about injuries. We're going to talk about there are 5 tools that we're going to talk about in regards to prevention and recovery. Because when it's inevitable that you're going to get in a situation where you're going to have to deal with some sort of injury, you're going to have to deal with some sort of limitation, and we're going to talk about how you can actually try to prevent those with some practical and actionable tools that could help you moving forward. It's not really complicated. It's not expensive. It's not expensive, and I have been pretty successful in helping people work through these injuries. And it's one thing about injuries, you have to kind of work them, and movement is medicine, and it will always give you the opportunity to recover if you continue to move. One of the things that we do, and one of the things that you should do after an injury, you should have a movement assessment. And one thing that they do I know because I was a professional athlete, after injury, they assess your movement, I would say several times during the rehab process. You should also have a targeted mobility plan, which helps, your joints as they become restricted. One of the things that happens is after you have a major surgery, if you've ever had a major surgery, and probably a few of you have, is they want to get you moving right now. They want to get you moving. They want to get the joint in motion, and they want to help the remodeling process start as soon as possible after repair is done. This is not just general stretching. This is a specific protocol or a specific system that's geared towards getting that joint back to where it's where it should be after repair has been done. One thing that targeted mobility does, it helps the body adjust to the changes that have happened during the injury, and it helps the body not be in such a state where it starts to compensate while you're healing. And one of the other main issues, and one of the main areas that people have been talking about, extensively, especially if you're a Browns fan, is Achilles injuries. The Achilles is a very, very tough and very, very resilient part of the ankle, but it can be compromised really, really, really easily, and it can give you, it can actually fail you just with a slight twist of the ankle or a repetitive loading of that joint in a way where you just have some where the joint is not totally mobile. One of the things that I've done over the last few years, I've done a number of I've researched a lot of the injuries, and research shows that individuals and athletes with stronger hamstrings and glute muscles, they have a significantly lower ACL injury rate. I actually wrote a blog about this, and I have on my website I have an injury prevention, ACL injury prevention tool that I use to help my athletes stave that off. One thing that we do several different exercises to make sure we double down on the strength of the posterior chain of the glutes and the hamstrings. One of the other tools is recovery is one of the main focuses as we heal from injury. Sleep, active recovery sessions, which means, mobility work, yoga, Pilates, anything that gets the joints moving, and soft tissue work. I'm a huge fan of foam rolling, compression, Grayson tools, cupping. Those all are huge in helping you recover from injuries. These are not luxuries, and if you're recovering from injury, you should really look at them as these are performance variables that will help you get back going sooner than later. The human body does not recover well unless you actually give it the tools to recover. Over the next few Tuesdays, we're going to talk about a number of other topics, just as I described, and I'm going to I'm going to really try to focus on being an asset to the Sideline Sports Network and give everybody the opportunity to hear take this opportunity to communicate my training philosophy and how I use the training programs here at Atlas to help athletes and general populations continue to improve and get better every day. If you guys join us every Tuesday, please like and subscribe the Game Ready podcast. I really, I'm as I go along, I'm trying to make sure that I cover everything. But I appreciate this opportunity, and I'll hopefully see you guys next Tuesday. You guys take care, and make somebody smile today, and enjoy. Get out and run, move around, and take the opportunity to use your body regardless of what the situation is, because you only get one. You guys take care.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Game Ready podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like this episode, share it with a friend, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future stories and insights from former athletes who've lived it. We appreciate your support. Stay locked in, stay motivated, and always stay game ready. See you next time.